Good evening. Welcome to a meeting of Gloucester City Council's Cabinet meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years. And if you are present in the chamber, you are consenting to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. The first item on the agenda is apologies. I know we have one from Councillor Field. Nobody else, I don't think. No? Are there any declarations of interest? No. The minutes of the meeting on the 13th of November. Any comments on those?
Yes, on the top of page 8 of the minutes, on section 35, my first question from Councillor Alistair Chambers, it was referring to homelessness and rough sleeping. So on the third line where it says homelessness, I'd like that to be changed to rough sleeping, because that's what the question was referring to. And then that should be more accurate.
That's it. Then they're okay. All right. So you're happy for me to sign the minutes, and there'll be a change to include that amendment to it, and they'll be recorded in the sets of minutes, won't it, David? Okay. Next item on the agenda is public questions. And the first question is from David Redwell. You've got your answer, written answer. What's your supplementary, David?
So my supplementary is, if there's further street art in the bus station or around the railway station, is there a separate budget for the public art? I welcome public art. I want to make sure it's not on the very limited amount of money we've got to run the transport hub or the areas around the transport hub. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you for your question. The same principles will be applied to any public art that goes into the transport hub as would go anywhere else in the city. So if we're commissioning additional artwork for the transport hub, it would be subject to the same review of how often it would need to be maintained and where the budget for maintaining it would come from. So so that's going to be part of the public art strategy that we're going to come on to later in my next presentation, about how we set up a strategy for assessing what ongoing costs are needed for any public art that we commission in the future.
We can go now to question 2, David.
Question 2. I mean, public art can be beautiful in tourist areas of Gloucester, to be honest, or the city, or gateway to the southwest. But there are parts of Gloucester where the history is not as nice as that. We've got, coming up in 2027, 200 years of Gloucester docks in the city. And of course, unless something's changed tonight, I can't see any references to the activities on Baker's Quay or the activities on Peelpot's Quay, or the association of the docks with the slave trade. There is no plaques, no statues, no recognition of the triangle trade, which was brutal in Gloucester when people were, goods went out from Gloucester, but then slaves were picked up from West Africa and transported to the West Indies, and then sugar and other trade came back to the city, and obviously some merchants in this city got very wealthy in the city and in Gloucestershire from the what was called at the time the triangle trade. But there doesn't appear to be any recognition of this side of the city with the celebrations. So my question really is, there's the LGBT community, there's Treadworth Barton and the White City and the working class areas. Will we really be targeting some of the artwork, and particularly are we planning to make sure that we explain the slave trade in the city when we actually talk about the docks? Because the docks will have a big celebration, but sweeping something under the carpet is not what the organisations that I represent. And Gloucestershire Community Rail Partnership gave us some money, by the way, to talk about, thank you, Chair, talk about the black and ethnic minority community in Gloucester on all the railway stations recently, and we're grateful for that. But we'd also like to make sure that this part of the history of the city is also understood, especially in the 200 celebrations. Thank you.
Thank you. The plans for the celebrations that will be taking place in 2027 to mark a number of events in our city's history, including the 200th anniversary of the docks, are still very much in progress. They're probably quite early stages at the moment. So that will be why you haven't seen very much detail about exactly what's going to be planned for that. We've started up some strategic groups that are starting to look at that planning now, and in due course we'll be involving people from our local communities and other stakeholder groups to participate in that. So more information will come out at the appropriate time when we've started making some more solid plans. As regards the telling the story of the Gloucester Docks' involvement in the transatlantic slave trade, you'll be aware that there was a review into the monuments that are linked to transatlantic slavery over the course of late 2000 and 2001, and quite a detailed report was produced out of the back of that. There were a number of recommendations listed in there. A number of those have already been completed. So I can point to, for example, there was a temporary exhibition on the life of George Whitefield, who was, who was a famous evangelist who went over to America and campaigned successfully for legalising slave trade. Work has been done at the Museum of Gloucester to present the story of him and his involvement. Also, the blue plaque that memorialised George Whitefield was replaced with one that gave perhaps a more accurate description of his previous involvement in the slave trade as well at St Mary de Crypt. We've also had temporary exhibitions at the Soldiers of Gloucestershire Museum in partnership with the University of Gloucestershire, which talked about the life of Ukasor Groniasor, who was formerly enslaved and later served as a soldier with the 28th Northern Gloucestershire Regiment in the West Indian campaigns of the 7 Years' War. And Gloucester Cathedral also commissions exhibitions from time to time. They started a project called Connected Lives, which sheds light on individuals who are memorialised within the cathedral, but it includes their connections to the transatlantic slave trade. So there are some things that have been implemented, but there is also still work ongoing as well, and future works planned. So at the moment, the city archaeologist is working with St Mary de Crypt to install new interpretations in there, with context to George Whitefield's life and works. Once that's completed, they're looking at how to come up with some options for educational resources so that people at school and in the city learn more about the history. And that could include types of public art, such as information panels. It could be street art or similar. It's not been defined yet, and when it is defined, it will be in line with the public art strategy that we're looking to commission to make sure that it tells the story concisely and correctly, that it's in the appropriate location, and that it represents how local people want to be informed and to understand the story of our involvement in that. So it's future work to come, and it will be done in consultation with local communities and local artists to make sure that it's in the right place and in the right tone for the city.
Okay, thank you. John, do you want to just say a few words?
Thank you, Leader. Just to add to Councillor Courtney's answer, in specific reference to Baker's Quay, we had an update report on the implementation of the Monuments Review came to Cabinet in 2023, which I'd advise you to have a look at to give you an update on all of the work. But in reference to Baker's Quay, Louisa's predecessor approached the site owner to talk about what their preferred approach was with regards to repurposing that public space in a way that educated and commemorated Gloucester's docks' historic links with the slave trade. The site owner advised us at that point that they were working to slowly remove the Baker's Quay name from the development. So they were definitely not using it for phase one of the development. So the Provender and the Premier Inn do not have Baker's Quay in their address. And they've said that it's not their intention to be used in phase two of that development when that comes forward either. So the site owner is very aware of what we're trying to do. He seems to be working in that regard as well. We obviously can't be responsible for the general public recognition of that place as Baker's Quay. We will just have to hope that that fades away and dies over time as we start to use a different terminology. As it happens, Andy Hearn, who's the new head of place, and myself are meeting the site owner tomorrow morning. So we're happy to pick that up again on behalf of Cabinet, just to make sure that's still his intention to proceed to phase out the Baker's name.
Thank you, Ken. We've got I've got two questions from Reg Daldry. So first one, if you'd like to come to the microphone, press the button when you've finished speaking, press it again. So we've got your questions. You've got we've had your written question, and we've had your we've provided you with a written answer. So you've got an opportunity for a supplementary.
Do I keep my finger on it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry for arriving 2 minutes late, but the reply to the question on the 1,000 spaces I asked regarding the Gloucester car boot and market, okay, it's very wishy-washy and untrue. Now, we have gone to the planning application, what everybody is tendered against for the new submission for the car boot. Now, this was passed in 2007. So you've asked everybody to re-tender against this planning application on the travel plan, which states 1,000 spaces. But obviously we'll go past that because you're saying that's untrue, that's wrong. Now, since this car boot has been operational from 2008, there has been over 1,000 spaces there. 4 different companies or businesses have operated from there, okay? And they've all used this land, what was available and designated for the Gloucester car boot market for the people of the city, all right? Now, on the 30th of May 2007, you got granted permission for the whole site, and it was widely pressed. And on the 31st of May 2007, Councillor Paul James done a live interview, and he stated The Gloucester car boot is now up and running in 2008. We're looking forward to it. We've got 1,000 capacity cars. So we're looking to grow this, and it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread. So I've got a copy of the recording, which I will send to whoever wants to take it. And also there's been lots of publicity about the 1,000 spaces, which I tried to engage with you, Mr. McGinty.
Can we just get to the, get straight to the question? What
Yeah, so
question?
I'm going to get to the question now.
Well, can you get to the question?
Yeah, I'm going to get to the question now. But, you know, please don't interrupt when I'm trying to talk, because this is...
Hang on, I'm chairing this meeting and I'm asking you to make your question. Well, we get to the question now. We don't want a whole history of what happened before. Get to the question. You're arguing about the 1,000 car parking spaces, and that's what you're saying should be in the tender documents. Okay.
Could have bypassed all this if, when I tried to interact...
Can we get to the question? Well, come on.
So why are we still saying that the car boot site has not got 1,000 spaces granted or passed?
Thank you. Doug.
Is this the right one?
No.
Yep. This is a supplementary to a different question. The notes that I have are that the original 1,000 was part of the outline planning permission of 2007, which wasn't enacted. I do know that the license that you had was based on 178 spaces or something like that, which is what you've been operating the last year. In many ways, all of this is not relevant in the sense that what we are looking for now is out in the tender documents, and it's now the closing date was a couple of days ago, and I don't know yet who has put in applications, but those applications will be then considered fairly and transparently, and ultimately it's what we ourselves want on that site and what we think is best for the local council taxpayer and for the local public. So really you need to work through the tender process, the same tender process that everybody else is working through, and when you're dealing with Bruton Knowles, who are the agent concerned. So in what may or may not have been the case in the past is not the case now, and it's the tender document is what we are looking for as the owner of the land.
You've got a second supplementary question to number 4. No, to the second supplementary to number 4.
So how much is the service charge? Obviously, it's Royal Institution Chartered, which is one of them. How much are the council looking to charge the winning tender?
Declan.
That will depend on the nature of each individual bid. If a number of bids have been received, they won't all necessarily be the same. They may be making different offers. So when we start the negotiation, that's when the number will be revealed as such. But we've only just started the process now, so I can't give you a number in a public meeting to you directly, and not to the other bidders who might have put a bid in. And they may have put in different bids for different niches, and they may be offering different things, which may result in different service charges. So I cannot give you a number until nobody can give you a number until they've gone through. If you have put in a bid, until they go through that bid, and then they will determine what the service charge would be. But it's just not one size fits all, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Mr. Dawdry. Okay.
So is that it? Is that we get 2 questions?
Yeah, you get 2 questions.
So when do I get to?
You get 2 questions.
Yeah.
No. Can you now leave the public platform? You've had your 2 questions. You've had 2 answers. No. There's no more questions. There's no more questions, Mr. Dawdry.
It's the next meeting, and am I allowed to long?
Well, you can ask more than questions if you want to.
You say you're not the part of the city.
Can you please now leave the public gallery? Yeah, go on. Can you sit in the back now?
Don't diss me.
And don't diss me.
I'm not. That's what I'm trying to do.
Can you,
I don't want you randomly to speak politely to me. Like I'm trying to speak politely to you.
can you leave the table?
Yeah.
That's the end of public questions. The next one is petitions and deputations. We haven't got any of those. Then item 7 was the money plan, but that was based on it following the previous processes which were changed in the last set of budget settings. So this will now come to Cabinet in January, where we'll have all the basic financial details from the government. We found that publishing a draft budget at this time of year was near impossible because we were waiting for the government. So, agenda item 7 is not part of the agenda. That'll come to the January Cabinet meeting when we've got the financial details from the government and we can better calculate what the budget will be. Item 8 is then the Treasury management update. Declan.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. This is the Q2 Treasury management update. The SIPFA Code of Practice for Treasury Management recommends that members be updated regularly on Treasury management activities. So this report covers the 6 months ending in September the 30th of this year. It highlights issues specific to the Council and provides interest rate forecasts in Appendix 2. The Treasury Management Strategy Statement was approved by this Council in March earlier this year. They give us our priorities, which were security of capital, liquidity and yield. As of the end of September, our average investment funds, this sort of cash we hold on a temporary basis, was 11.5 million. They are dependent on, they're very short term and they're dependent on timing of precept payments, receipt of grants and capital programme progress. So the average was, as I said, 11.5 million, but that comes in and goes back out again. We do have some long-term cash balances, that's 12.5 million. These are funds available generally for over a year. Most of those were held with an institution called the CCLA, which stands for Churches, Charities and Local Authorities. It's a very ethical investment body that we used quite a lot, where we put the majority of our cash, or long-term cash. I'm pleased to say we outperformed the benchmark by 38 basis points. With regards new borrowing, no new long-term borrowing has been undertaken in the period. And as regards debt rescheduling opportunities, actually there are opportunities to maybe reschedule some of our debt in the sense that because gilt yields have risen materially, and these underline or underpin Public Works Loan Board and marketing loans. So there is some scope there that we can look at, and I'll keep the Cabinet and Council itself updated on any actions that we take there. With regards to compliance with Treasury and prudential limits, it is our statutory duty to keep under review affordable borrowing limits, and it's also our approved Treasury and prudential indicators must also be reviewed, and that's in the Treasury Management Strategy Statement. I'm pleased to say that in the period of the first 2 quarters of the year, the Council has operated within the Treasury limits set out in both the Treasury Management Strategy and in compliance with the Council's Treasury Management Practice. So there's nothing really else to report. It might be worth mentioning that the Appendix 3 that we have detailed our long-term cash balances and where we put them as requested at previous Council meetings. So that's on Appendix 3 if anybody wants to look at that. And you can see where we've been investing the few bits of long-term cash that we've got. Other than that, I've got nothing else to add. Thank you.
Any other comments from Cabinet? No? We'll accept the recommendations. Thank you. Item 9, risk management policy statement and strategy. That's your again, Declan.
It is indeed. Okay, so the Council Risk Management Strategy, it comes to Cabinet on an annual basis. It's good practice to regularly review this. Risk management is a key part of this Council's corporate governance framework and our internal control environment. What this strategy does is to set out the importance of risk management and how we manage our risk on a day-to-day basis. In Section 1, we have the policy statement that identifies the benefits of risk management in helping the Council to achieve our objectives and highlights key roles within the Council associated with risk management. Section 2 of the strategy statement develops these roles and links risk management to governance and the annual governance statement and how this relates to the Council's strategic management. Section 3 talks about the benefits of risk management and how this relates to the work of internal audits. And then sections 4, 5 and 6 together provide further information on how risk management helps the Council achieve its objectives, including, for example, in setting the tone from the top, ensuring consistency of application of the policy and processes around risk management across the Council, developing leadership capacity, learning lessons from areas where risk management can be improved, adopting good practice and embedding risk management into the business and service plan and the actual daily processes of the Council. Section 5 goes on to articulate the Council's risk appetite and how also this helps the Council. Section 7 sets out how Council monitors the effectiveness of its risk management processes. And Section 8 sets out the role of members and officers throughout the Council regarding risk management. It is our intention that once this strategy is endorsed, that is disseminated to members and officers to reaffirm the Council's risk management objectives. And that's it.
There are. Any comments, questions? We're happy to adopt and agree with the recommendations? Okay, that's great. Item 10, local tax support scheme.
Right, I'm on a bit of a roll, yep. Okay, so Council Tax Support Scheme 2025-26. Actually, this is a bit more newsworthy than a lot of people think. We're required to look at this every financial year, and there's sort of the local Council Tax Support Scheme. It affects people of working age who are on low incomes or maybe struggling, who need help with their council tax. It doesn't affect pensioners because they're part of a national scheme, but ultimately the cost is met by all councils. The councils that are still running it, the current scheme, first of all, is more generous than most other local authorities because it is still possible in Gloucester to get 100% relief. If we look at the scheme and the proposals before you, what I am suggesting we do is we broadly continue to mirror the previous council tax benefit scheme. Now, the way this worked was up until 2012, there was it was run on a national basis and it was abolished, and the responsibility was passed down to local councils. And effectively, what we've done on this council is we've managed to mirror what was there in 2012 nationally, and we've continued with it until today. So I propose that we still provide up to 100% support to the most vulnerable residents. I don't know if anyone watches programmes such as Politics West on a Sunday, but you will have seen there were stories about some councils in Somerset were planning on abolishing this, and they were causing great distress amongst people who have been relying on this for years. It was our view that it would not be a good thing right now in the middle of a cost of living crisis to take away the 100% relief. So we will be continuing with the scheme as it has been running since 2012. There are some changes, but these are sort of, well, first of all, we will be updated just to align with legislative changes, which are expected in the new year. So that's technical. That's fine. There is one other change we're going to be making, and this was the result of a motion that came before Council in September. And it was to do with armed forces compensation lump sum payments. These were not allowed, these were disregarded as they were counted as capital when assessing whether or not people qualified for council tax support, whereas somebody who got civilian compensation, that didn't count, so didn't count as capital, so it didn't affect their claim, but it did for veterans. So there was a motion came before council in September, and we said we would consider, and we've decided that we are now going to introduce that. So that is probably the most significant change we will be making to the policy. So we will be improving it, and we will be making sure that armed forces veterans who get compensation through injury will not lose any of the benefits that they might have had on this scheme as a result. So that's a positive thing as well. The other positive story is that we will be continuing with the up to 100% support that we've been running up until now. We will not be changing that. So those are two things. Other than that, it's still broadly the same scheme that we have been running. And again, I cannot emphasize enough, compared to a lot of other councils, this is a very generous policy, and it's our intention to continue it.
Can I say that I'm really pleased to be able to support this. I think, in view of the fact that we've had debates about the problems people are facing with the cost of living in Gloucester, and had debates with motions at council, and then we had a paper at the previous cabinet meeting to agree a cost of living action plan. This is clear evidence that this administration has taken it to heart, and that what we're doing is maintaining this policy, which we don't have to do. And quite clearly, a large number of other local authorities are not providing the 100% relief that we are doing so in Gloucester. So we should be really pleased that we are able to maintain this, despite the fact that Gloucester City Council is also suffering from the cost of living crisis. Our costs are going up for staff, our costs for services and everything else is going up. But we've managed to find the money to maintain this one, and also found the money to enhance it related to armed services veterans. So I recommend to Cabinet that we support. Does anybody else want to say anything? No? Thank you. We'll support that one. Cheers. That's item 10 done with. Item 11, that's you again, Declan.
Yep, this is my last one. So, non-domestic rates discretionary relief. Background to this is essentially that, businesses can get business rate relief in really only in exceptional circumstances. However, under the Localism Act of 2011, we have the power to create our own scheme. So the change in government legislation means we can get our own rules for notification of reliefs in our local scheme from 24-25. As things stand, registered charities get a mandatory 80% business rate relief, although we can make it up to 100%. Non-profit organisations can get up to 100%. Business rate or non-domestic business rate relief. The current policy, again, came into effect in 2012, and we haven't really refuted since then. So the policy needs updating because of several reasons, really. Legislative changes, to provide clarity for businesses applying for relief, to provide guidelines for decision-making, and to support and review all current cases in receipt of relief. If you look at Appendix 1, you will see the policy as such. It considers how business premises will be used, how they qualify, what is their contribution to local communities. So this is essentially the basis that we decide whether or not they qualify for business rate relief. Appendix 2 will be is a schedule of changes to the policy, which is, again, it's a technical matter in one sense. It's to do with the staff who used to use it. I think it was Civica they worked for. They were transferred across to ourselves. So we have to change the decision schedule and who approves what, and how how we run appeals and what officers have authority to take these decisions. The appeals process will hopefully then become more transparent and give a view of how a decision is arrived at and the officer responsible for that decision. If we look at future work, we have to, all current applications will be invited to reapply to receive the relief from the 1st of April 2026. Letters will be sent out by the end of January 2025, and they'll have about a year. So we haven't looked at this for a long time, so we need to look through all the businesses that are currently getting this relief and satisfy ourselves that they still qualify for it. So that will be quite a long process, but there are not too many throughout the city, but this is just an exercise of good practice, really. So other than that, there isn't really much change to the policy as it has existed for some time, other than the changes to the delegation of authority and how we run the appeals. So it tidies it up a bit, and we gives us the ability also to sort of look at the businesses that have been having this relief and just making sure that everything's still as it was so many years ago. So it's just it's sort of tightening it up, really, nothing more than that. So that's it.
Okay, anybody got any comments? No? Quiet tonight, don't know what's gone wrong with them. We're happy to support. Yeah. All right then. We get to item 12, public art. I'm rather excited by this report. Caroline.
Yeah, on to something hopefully a little less dry after all those financial, no offence, Declan, you made them sound really interesting. So first of all, when we're talking about public art, we're referring to any permanent, semi-permanent, temporary or event-based art in any medium that's presented in the public realm. So that can include sculptures, it can include street art, performance art. Some existing examples that we've got in Gloucester include St Kindberg's Tower and Wall, which you probably refer to as the CD rack, because I think everybody does, at the bottom of Southgate Street. Temporary art includes Knife Angel, that was presented at Gloucester Cathedral. Street art, we've got Rainbow Square murals. And we, of course, have the BHS reliefs, which are moulded concrete and ceramic panels that used to hang on the walls of the old BHS building on Eastgate Street. They're in storage at the moment. And they depict the goods that were on sale in shops at the time. So they tell the story of our city and its history. So public art has an important role to play in the life of our city and its residents. It's not just about attracting visitors to Gloucester. It can also contribute to civic pride. It can tell the story of our heritage, of our people, our communities. It can speak about our past, our present, and our future. It helps us to feel connected to the city and to one another. And it reflects our collective identity. It helps make this a nice place to live, and hopefully will attract new residents and businesses to our city. In the modern age of online shopping, public art plays an increasingly important role now in encouraging people to spend more time in city centres, because high streets are just becoming less retail focused now and a bit more arts and culture focused. So going on to the public art strategy, having a public art strategy will provide us with a framework to make sure that before we commission any new public art, we'll have considered what are the strategic outcomes that we're looking to achieve, what are our priority locations, what story are we trying to tell, and most importantly, it helps us to involve our local communities and local artists in the decision making. The last time we produced a public art strategy was back in 2006. It was produced by Ginkgo Projects Limited. And then in 2020, officers at the council produced a set of 5 principles to guide the commissioning of public art. But unfortunately, these were not formally adopted by the previous administration. So now more than ever, it's important to revisit our approach to public art so that we can put the heart back into Gloucester. And this is why we want to procure the services of a public art specialist to come up with a refreshed approach and framework that it will draw upon work that's been completed already in the past, so including the previous public art strategy I just mentioned. There was a report called Thinking Place, which is a place story and place marketing approach that was developed in 2021. And we had the Gloucester Public Realm strategy that was adopted in 2017. There are links to these documents in the appendices. They're quite long documents, but a lot of work's already been done in this area that we want to utilise. The strategy will need to consider a number of things, which includes how we incorporate the findings of these various studies that we've already completed, how we would work with Together Gloucester, which is our new funding strategy on how to access funding and gain community input from those new ways of working, how public art should be interpreted. Sometimes it's not enough just to look at it. You want to know why it's there, what it's supposed to be about, where public art should be cited and what restrictions that may impose on the form it will take and the materials that we would use, how the art would be maintained, as Mr. Redwell was asking about earlier, and on what schedule. How will we work with strategic partners such as Gloucester County Council, Gloucester Culture Trust, University of Gloucestershire and various others? How we would consult with local community groups and artists in the decision-making process. And of course, how we would ring-fence funds for this from future capital development projects. So a lot of work needs to go into it, and we estimate that we'll need a budget of approximately 20k to commission this. The funding's already been identified for it, and we'll know the exact cost once the procurement exercise has been carried out. But I hope you can see the importance of this for our city, and we'll provide your approval to proceed.
Thank you, Caroline. As I said, I was excited about this report because it is one of the key aspects of our manifesto, and it's one thing that we've seen public art being created in Gloucester, but I always thought that we don't do enough. We sit back on it too much, and we've not taken the opportunities that we could have had to create more public art in the city. I mean, public art, I always find when I'm visiting various parts of the world and I walk around the cities, you actually walk from one place to the next. And I think having public art in various parts of the city centre and around the city encourages people to go and have a look. But it also means that they walk past the cafe that was tucked around the corner, and that cafe then gets more business because they've got that public art next to them. It creates visitor routes. It tells a story of the city, and we've got history of 2,000 years to tell, and there's quite a bit of gaps already, I think, in the story that we can tell. So I think we've got to work hard on this. I mean, the report also talks about 1% for art in there, about 1% of the capital cost, which is what happened with the bus station when we put the Gloucester window in there. So we need to look at that, and we sort of need to look at it. I'm looking at our new head of place when we get to talk about Greyfriars and how we develop around there. There's a great opportunity, not only with a wonderful old Priory building and other aspects around there, but to create more public art in that location, I think will be really good for Gloucester. So this is a report that we do need to take forward. We've found the money to carry out the initial study work. We need to progress it swiftly. We need to get that probably key member staff employed to then deliver it in the future. And then we also need to find the finances to create those commissions, which will make Gloucester a much more exciting place for everybody, for the people that live here, but also for the visitors that come to Gloucester. I just know that's what I do. I go around with my camera taking various things. I remember going to Oslo and being blown out by some of the great public art, and it wasn't expensive stuff. It was quite a lot of small stuff, but it really was fantastic. Just walk around the city and just see what were being created by people with imagination. And I'm sure there's plenty of people with an imagination. It'll cause controversy, of course, because people will say, I don't like that. And others will say, well, I really love it. But that's what public art should do. It should create should create a talking point. and we don't expect everybody to like what's commissioned. Just hope there's a lot of them that do like it. Anybody else want to say anything? No? No? We'll agree to that one then, Caroline? Yep. And then the final one, I think, is infrastructure funding. This is really a report from the last council year, really, what happened. Sarah, it's you.
Yeah, sorry, mine is a bit dry, but I'll keep it short. I'm bringing the annual infrastructure funding statement to Cabinet today. This is a statutory statement detailing the contributions we have received from developers over the year up to the 31st of March 2024 in the form of SIL and Section 106. Also details how much we've spent and how much is carried over. The interesting bit is that to date, most of the SIL is unspent and has been pooled with Tewkesbury and Cheltenham. But in January next year, it will start to be allocated. And I'm pleased to say that we've got 2 bids in for Gloucester. That's what I want to say. Thanks.
Okay. Are we happy to accept the report? And I'm glad we've got the 2 bids in for the strategic funding, because we've provided about £1 million, haven't we? I think, or more than that. So we need to recover that somehow with projects which will benefit the city of Gloucester. Also, benefit the people that are coming into Gloucester as well. That's part of the reason why we're working with Tewkesbury and Cheltenham Borough Council, because some of the money is being created by Tewkesbury Borough Council, but it's part of the housing need of Gloucester. Part of the joint core strategy because we're constrained, our boundaries are constrained, and we really haven't got much land left. It means some of the development, the strategic sites are there because of meeting the city's needs, and therefore it's important that maybe some of the other projects like the cycle routes into the main spine from Longford or from Innsworth or other places should be commissioned, and we should be looking at those as well. Okay, yeah. I think we're done now. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you all. It's taken us 45 minutes.